They know there's trillions of dollars in opportunity here and they're circling. So you better have a team to go to bat for you or you're going to lose out on opportunities.
The SBA changed their SOP, or their standard operating procedure, to allow for a portion of the seller note to reduce the amount the buyer had to use as a down payment. So effectively allowing a buyer to buy a business twice as large. The Trump administration increased the SBA loan guarantee to $10 million for manufacturing companies. So if you're within one of those NAICS codes, you can now acquire a business or sell a business up to $10 million and have that fully guaranteed. Anything above that, of course, we've got to get creative.
Hello, everybody. This is Steve Burton here. Welcome back to the Scale to Sell podcast, episode number 48. We're going to be talking about SBA changes and what it means to the sell of your business, or if you're going to be purchasing a business. Good friend of our podcast and associate with us on our Scale to Sell platform, Jeff Snell, back. I think this is our third trip back in. Jeff, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Anyway, so you've been in the M&A in the business for over 20 years now, and I suspect that not every sale that you have involves an SBA loan, but I would think that it would be a high number of them. And there's been some changes going on here recently. So, what we want to start talking about a little bit about these changes, the ones that have gone on now, proposed changes. But why is it important? It's important to people because whether you're looking to buy a business or sell a business, get to enlarge that circle of opportunities there for you for these some of these adoption and changes. It's either going to enhance your opportunity, it's going to reduce your opportunity. But I think it's important on both sides, not just to the seller, but also to anybody looking to acquire a business as well. But just a little bit about the trends going on with the SBA and just some things, because I know you're heavily involved in that. So just some opening thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started in this business a little over 22 years ago, the SBA was kind of viewed as a lender of last resort. They were slow, or perceived as being slow, expensive, and if you could avoid it, you wanted to. Well, over that period of time to today, that perception and reality has really changed. So the SBA guarantees commercial loans. A lot of people think that the SBA loans money, and except in very specific situations, usually not associated with business acquisition, they do not. They only guarantee the commercial lenders. Think, Wells Fargo, Live Oak Bank, Pinnacle, etc. So what we've seen in recent times that are relevant to business buyers and sellers really starts in 2023. When the SBA changed their SOP, or their standard operating procedure, to allow for a portion of the seller note to reduce the amount the buyer had to use as a down payment. So effectively allowing a buyer to buy a business twice as large. That's pretty exciting, both for buyers and sellers. Well, the requirement at that time was that portion of the seller note being applied to what they call the buyer's equity injection had to be on full standby for 2 years. Full standby just means no payment of principal or interest. So not a really big deal. You have 5%. Now the buyer only needs 5% down. The seller has to wait 2 years, and if they're properly represented, can accrue interest during that 2-year period. It's not a big deal. We had more transactions at slightly higher values. Good for the buyer, good for the seller. Well, earlier this year, they changed that to a 10-year standby. And that all of a sudden became unattractive to sellers. It actually became more attractive to buyers because you don't have to service that debt for a decade, except if you incur the 10 years of accrued interest, where let's say it's $100,000 becomes almost $400,000 depending upon the accrued interest rate. So those are the big issues that are affecting most business buyers and sellers today. Now, there's also a parallel issue, for lack of a better word, going on in the SBA space, where the SBA guarantee has been capped at $5 million. Now, a lot of people assume that means you can only buy a $5 million business, but that's not true. It means you can only have $5 million of your acquisition loan guaranteed. So if you have a $6 million business and you have $1 million down payment, you're good with the SBA. There's creative ways to bridge gaps between $5 million and above, but that's the most common is seller financing. Um, I've been interested in seeing the SBA loan guarantee rate move from $5 to $10 million since October or November of last year. And the reason for that is the last time the SBA guarantee rate was increased was in 2014 when it went from $2.5 to $5 million. So it doubled. Well, it's been, I guess, 15 years now, 14 when I was initially having these conversations. And I've got some podcasts on my website that people might want to check out. They're very short, but they talk about the issues of SBA loan guarantee maximums. A buyer today has, I'd have to do the rapid math, it was 46% or 47% less buying power today than they did in 2014 if you impute a 3% cost of living increase. That's just an average. We can use whatever numbers we want. But the point is, it's not keeping up. So to address your question about what we're seeing and some potential changes, I'd like to see, and I know a lot of colleagues and a lot of lenders would like that to see that SBA loan guarantee cap increased to at least what would be comparable to what it was in 2014.
And I'd put it at $10 million. I would think cover of course, not all businesses, but a lot of them. Besides the cap and going up, what other changes are you looking at right now? Anything else major that might impact somebody? It'd be an attractive time for somebody to buy a business or sell a business.
Yeah. So from an SOP guideline, I don't know, and it's probably none of my doing. But most people who are watching the news and kind of trying to stay current on business transaction issues know that the Trump administration increased the SBA loan guarantee to $10 million for manufacturing companies. So if you're within one of those NAICS codes, you can now acquire a business or sell a business up to $10 million and have that fully guaranteed. Anything above that, of course, we've got to get creative. There's many ways to do that, but that's a great opportunity, and I'm hoping that's kind of a sandbox to see, does this work? What's our default rates? Can we expand this to all NAICS codes? Because I believe if it's good for manufacturing, it's going to be good for everybody. So that is a major potential change, that it goes just from manufacturing to any type of business acquisition that's, of course, not on what I call the blacklist. They don't call it that, but there's certain businesses, industries, and franchises that are not SBA guaranteeable because of their historical default rates. But if we cut that out of the conversation, I think it's good for everybody.
So SBA, if you had to look at your book of businesses that you look at selling on an annualized basis right now, with interest rates being where they are, is the SBA loan is still the most popular type loan for you? Is there other forms of finance? I know we're focusing today on SBA, but percentage-wise, what do you think of the transactions that you have, what it might represent?
Virtually all up to the maximum allowable. And the reason for that, the SBA started, Small Business Administration Loan Guarantee Program started because the government wanted to incentivize commercial lenders to fund entrepreneurialism, give business owners who were wanting to sell or needing to sell a way to do that in a manner in which they could maximize their value or at least get fair market value. Well, over the years, we all know what bureaucracy is. Banks realized all we have to do is say, we want to grant this loan if the buyer's not willing for an SBA to pay for an SBA guarantee. Well, that became free insurance for the lenders. So it's now essentially universal. Having a traditional loan on a business acquisition or having no loan is almost unheard of, because let's say you have $100,000 and there's no seller buyer equity injection from a note on standby. That typically means you can buy $1 million business, right? Well, if you have $100,000, you're not going to buy a $100,000 business because at a 3 times multiple, that's going to yield you $33,000 a year. You use leverage post debt service, you're going to at least double that. So I'm seeing that SBA is essentially universal. Unless you have a banking relationship where you could pay cash, and the SBA is not going to give you a guarantee if you can pay cash. There's SOPs related to that as well. There's going to be an SBA guarantee involved.
Right now, as far as getting one of these loans, do you think it's harder or easier than it has been in the past? And how might these changes to legislation impact that as well?
I guess it would depend on the time frame that we're talking about. If we're going back 20 years, I think it's easier. If we're going back post COVID, I think it's the same, which is not a large uphill climb. It's not a heavy lift to get an SBA guarantee. You do have to meet, there's many criteria, but there's 7 primary criteria. The newest one that was implemented by the Trump administration is nobody on the cap table, which means they're going to be an equity owner post transaction, can be a non-citizen. You either have to be a permanent visa holder, a naturalized citizen, or a natural born U.S. citizen. There no more foreign investment, no more foreign ownership. And that's affected some transactions of ours, especially in the technology sector. Some people are going to think that's a positive. Some people are going to think that's a negative, but that's a significant change that has come into play in the last 6 or 9 months.
Any last thoughts? We're going to wrap it up here, and we're going to carry you over to the next podcast, and we'll continue on talking along these same lines. But any last thoughts here before I give I think it's important information for people to understand and strategizing about selling your business. Unlike selling your house, where you might want to move in, and maybe you're going to move in January or March of next year, and you wait until January or March to put the house on the market. Maybe you tidy it up, paint a room or two. But getting your business positioned to sell in time and trying to time it the best time to sell it, that's hard to do, difficult to do. But any last thoughts before we send them to our website and they can get a hold of you, get a hold of our team, our tax team. Anyway, I'll tell them more about that in a minute. But any final thoughts as regards to the SBA program?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. On the sell side, preparation, we need to optimize an exit 6-12 months. We can be doing a lot of stuff concurrent with that. Steve's team can be doing tax planning. They can do exit planning, retirement planning. We can be, on my side, preparing the business for sale, doing the financial analysis. But that's the timeline that I would encourage sellers to be aware of. Sellers also need to be aware with the SBA SOP that you're very likely to be asked to participate in that buyer equity injection program. So 5% of the total transaction value currently is on 10-year standby, working on getting that changed back to the 2 years. But for now, might be 10 years. Look at it holistically. If as a seller, you don't believe 10 years matters, then you need to focus on your cash at closing. So that's on the sell side. On the buyer side, you need to be prepared. There are more buyers in the market now than I have ever seen in my career. It is an avalanche of interest. And there's several factors we might want to talk about on another podcast that I believe are driving that. But if you want to stand out as a qualified buyer and buy a business that's in demand, like a home services business, manufacturing business, anything that has very popular appeal at the moment, you need to be prepared. You need to have an SBA pre-qual letter, which any lender that's SBA qualified lender can provide. PLP lender is preferred lending program. They're kind of considered up the scale with the brokers and the sellers because they don't issue conditional credit letters to just anybody. You need to be able to show your CV or your bio that you have relevant experience, because that's an SBA requirement, that you have the funding, which you get from your SBA pre-qual letter. You want to be able to articulate what your interest in the business is, what your timing is, and what your expectations are in the form of a term sheet or a well-articulated letter of intent. And these issues are I just probably gave 10 more podcast topics, but at a high level, those are the things that I feel that sellers and buyers should be focused on at the front end of the process as it relates to the SBA.
You know what you need? You need a team. So if you're looking to acquire a business, what I'm hearing right now is there's so many people, whether it's individuals or small groups, existing businesses, private equity, large and small, there's a lot of competition fighting. They know there's trillions of dollars in opportunity here, and they're circling. So you better have a team to go to bat for you, or you're going to lose out on opportunities. And you can have a team by going to scaletosell.com/discovery, starting the process. We have a team. We have M&A expert Jeff Snell and his team. We have a tax team. I'm the financial advisor. And getting a plan together, if you're looking to sell, it's probably not been as, if there's so many buyers, it tells me, Jeff, right now is a great time to be a seller. That's one thing. And, but anyway, but you got to have all your ducks in a row, so to speak. It means you got to be, is your personal finances squared away? Can you harvest enough money from the sale of the business to net of taxes and fees to walk away and live your best life, open up a new chapter, whether it's starting another business or selling off into the sunset? And so many things to consider. I would encourage you to start the conversation. The podcast helps. But if you want to have a more direct conversation with me, Jeff, and our team, go to scaletosell.com/discovery, scaletosell.com/discovery. Jeff, we're going to have you back on the next podcast that typically launches a broadcast every couple weeks or so. But anyway, we appreciate your time. Jeff, we'll see you back in just a little bit of time on the next podcast. Take care, guys, and go to scaletosell.com. And as Adam says, keep scaling. We'll see you soon.